In this video, I'm going to add to this simple planets single table SQLAlchemy database a delete functionality. So I'm going to add a WTF form that is going to give the user probably a drop-down list, a select field to choose one of the planets to delete. We'll probably pick on poor Pluto, or maybe we'll pick on more than one planet. And so that's what we're going to do. Okay, so I have the code spread out over a number of files. This first one is the define. I'm defining the database. It doesn't sort of do anything, but it's the definitions called on by all of the other files. I've sort of killed the database, so I want to run through next the load, which sort of reads, I have a CSV file in my static data, and I'm just reading through and adding the name of the planet, the period of the planet, the time to go around the sun, and the distance from the sun. And I'm adding the planets, and then in the end committing. And there's also an ID, but the ID is an integer and it's auto-incremented. So now I have the database. We can see it down here, Planet DB, and it's got data in it. So I pop over to the query page, and I have no new queries that I haven't talked about previously, but I'll run it just to spit out some data down here in the terminal. And so we see there at the bottom, you can see Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So there are planets in the database now. Okay. And eventually I'll spend most of my time on routes, but let's first pop over to forms. This is one of the new file. And this is just a large comment right here. Bring in WTForms, and I have a select field. A lot of this is not used, this sort of darker green. I'm using a submit button and a select. It's going to select a planet and delete it. That's all I've got here. So these are just vestiges of other things I've had in the past and then sort of taken away for now. I was at one point querying the database here and to make my choices. So I have a select field. I have what is going to be a drop-down select over on what becomes HTML. And I was getting myself going to the database, getting a list of planets, and but that's all now commented out. So I'm just going to delay coming up with the choices, and I'm going to do that over on my routing page. So all I have here in WTF is I have a variable planet underscore ID, which is going to correspond to a select field, a drop-down list, and a submit field, which is the submit button. Okay, and let's see, planet delete. Here's where I use the planet ID. So this becomes this Jinja over here will become and when it becomes HTML, will become a drop-down select, and this will become a submit button. It's in a form. I don't have a separate handler for the delete because I'm just going to pop over to one of my data tables and say, look there, that planet is gone. I mean, it could have been a separate HTML handler that said you have deleted Pluto, but I've decided to just there are few enough planets that I could just pop over to the data table and you'll be able to see it's gone by seeing it no longer in the table. That was just a choice made by the fact that there's a small number of planets. Might handle it differently if there were more records. Okay, so now finally to the routes. And one thing I've changed about the routes, because now I'm deleting, now I'm changing what the data in the data tables. I have a bunch of data tables, just plain HTML table, an old-fashioned jQuery data table, a new grid.js data table, and then I have my API. All of those things put out data, and that the amount of data can change because I've now added a delete functionality. And what I was doing before was I was just querying the data and putting it into some format I like, usually a list of dictionaries. So for grid.js, that's different. But I was querying it sort of up here before, outside of any route. And now I don't know, the data is going to change because I'm deleting, and I don't know which route the user will be going to. So I've changed where I am querying. And I should go back to the definition. One thing is, if I haven't said it before, I've moved over to the check same thread false, because I was sort of at one stage tripping over all of the thread stuff. So back to routes. Okay. So what I'm going to do now with all my routes is query the database sort of within the handling of the route. So I have a default route. It's going to go to the table, which is the HTML table. And so here's my table, and I do my query, and this little code here it makes it a list of dictionaries. And for going over to the jQuery, I do the query. So before I'd done this query once outside, now I'm doing it each time, because I may delete and then come to this planet table, and then I may delete again and come back. And so I want the data to be sort of fresh. So I'm going back to the database and requerying. I could sort of keep track of the records. That would be another way to do it, and sort of delete them from the sort of delete them from my list of dictionaries. That would be another possible approach. But I'm jumping back to the database. Okay, here's my grid.js version. I use a different query there. I'm doing a named properties query. And then I have this extra massaging of the data to get it in the form that grid.js likes. Here's my Planet API. Again, with each one of these, I am now querying within the route before I actually jump off and do the actual routing. I am requerying. And here, this is the API, so there's no HTML here. It's just a dumping of JSON. And now finally, the delete route. Okay, so this is responsible for all the other changes, because this is where I can change what's in the database. And I had previously done an insert, and it was a very simple insert. And I was just keeping track of the changes sort of more in memory. So this is a change in tactic where I'm going to the database and requerying over and over again. But here's my planet delete. Here's the querying, and I'm making a set of choices. So that is a list of tuples. That's what WTF wants for its choices. So I could do that with a list comprehension, but I also have this function hanging around. So it's not a function here, but it's just a bit of code hanging around that also does it the old-fashioned way. So that's what I've done here. So I'm making my planet list a list of tuples, so the user's going to see the name, but behind the scenes is the ID. And I make those the choices. Then I establish my form by going over to a delete planet form, and then I set up the choices. So again, pop over to the form one more time. Typically, you would see like this. I have up here, I would have some choices equals, and then have some list that I made up here of, a list of tuples for the choices. But I'm not doing that here in the WTForm Python file. So I must do it over here. And so here it is. Form planet underscore ID dot choices equals planet choices. And now here's my form coming back. So if the user has been on this form and responded to it, then I am getting the ID, result planet ID. I want it to be, when you're working with it as a value of a choice that's being passed back and forth, it tends to pass it as a string. So I'm casting as an int, and then I am getting my planet with that ID. So I'm using that ID to identify the planet. And then I just have some print statements to tell myself what's going on down in the terminal that I'm going to delete, and what's the name of the planet I'm going to delete. And then I delete that planet and commit. And then I want to sort of move off of the delete page. And I've decided to, instead of having a separate handler that said you've successfully deleted Pluto, to just go to the data table. And so because of that, I, again, requery so that the data I'm sending to my data table, and this was the data table, so this is the jQuery version that I'm sending it to. But I requery before that, get it in the format that I like. And this is the planet delete. So this is the HTML that we looked at. This is if you're not coming back from a valid submit, then you're down here and you're onto the delete page. So that would be like the first time, maybe some kind of return to it. And let's see it in action. We've been through all the code. Let's see it in action. So I have the routes. That's what I want to run. And I think I edited the layouts. I didn't show you that, but all I've done to the layouts is add to the navigation. So I can get around. So here I'm on my default route, which is the HTML table. And you see right now I have 9 planets, including Pluto. I'll move over to delete. And I've just made it a simple, this sort of orangey thing here, salmon, is my sort of error message, and sort of shouldn't be, it seems to be displaying even though there's no error message at this stage. And of course we'll pick on Pluto. When I was young it was a planet, and now it's no longer a planet, they say, and so we'll delete it. And that's taking me over to my I'm still in the planet delete route, because that's what I said to do. I was within the route. I'm still within, I didn't say move to another route. I didn't redirect. I just said stay in this route, but bring up the data table. So I'm in the delete route, but this is the jQuery data table, and no Pluto. 1 to 8, no 9. And then I have, and that's true for a table, no Pluto. The data table is just where we were, but now because I've clicked on the navigation, I'm in the planet data table route. No Pluto, grid.js, no Pluto, because each one of those queries before we go to it, sort of as part of the route, we query, we get new data, and then even the API, no Pluto, there's the last one's Neptune. You can go back. And then, we can delete again, but we've been through all of the different tables. They all have gotten the message that Pluto's no longer a planet and aren't displaying it. And so I just keep going and delete other planets, but I think you get the idea. So that's what I wanted to show. We added a delete functionality. We did a simple WTForms to set up the drop-down select. the select field and the submit button. There's the drop down select, there's the submit button. And then we were, and then the one of the changes, let's get rid of another planet. Let's get rid of Uranus. Okay. And then one of the ideas here was that we needed to, because the data was changing, one of the big changes was before we went to any route, we sort of requeried, we got the new data. Right, that's what I wanted to show you on this one. Thanks for your attention.